Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks. My name is Jonathan Hale. I grew up with nothing, but I built an empire worth $85 million with my own hands. And yet, the people I loved most turned into my enemies. You'll get nothing, old man, my daughter screamed, slamming her hand on the mahogany dining table so hard the glasses shook. Her face twisted with entitlement, her voice dripping with venom. Don't expect a dime from Dad's estate, because it's all going to me. I stared at her across the table, my own flesh and blood, the little girl I once rocked to sleep, now glaring at me like a vulture circling prey. My heart throbbed with equal parts anger and grief. I raised this child. I sacrificed decades of sweat, missed birthdays, sleepless nights, and backbreaking work to make sure she never felt the hunger and fear I knew as a boy. And now, this was what she had become. You think you already own me, Vanessa? I said, my voice trembling, not from weakness but from rage held back for too long. I'm not even gone yet, and you speak of me like I'm nothing but a bank account waiting to be emptied. She smirked, tilting her head, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. Don't be dramatic, Dad. Everyone knows you're getting old. The lawyers will do their thing, the papers will be signed, and everything will come to me. That's how it should be. I'm your daughter. Who else would you leave it to? The room fell silent. My brother-in-law shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My younger son, Daniel, lowered his eyes to his lap, torn between speaking up and staying quiet. My second wife, Clara, clutched her wine glass tighter, as though trying to hide behind its stem. The air was thick, suffocating. I leaned forward, planting my palms firmly on the table, forcing her to meet my gaze. Respect is earned, Vanessa. And all I see in you right now is greed. You've forgotten everything I taught you about family, about gratitude, about humility. She laughed, a cruel, mocking laugh that echoed through the dining hall. Spare me the lectures, Dad. Humility doesn't pay bills. Gratitude doesn't buy mansions. I learned from watching you that power and money are the only things that matter. You didn't build 85 million by being humble, you built it by being ruthless. So don't blame me for following your example. Her words hit me like a hammer. I wanted to deny them, to insist I had built my empire on integrity and hard work. But somewhere deep inside, I knew there was a sliver of truth in what she said. Still, I had never wanted her to inherit my mistakes. Daniel finally looked up, his voice small but steady. Vanessa, that's not fair. Dad gave us everything. We're supposed to honor him, not treat him like, he hesitated, glancing at me. Like he's already gone. Vanessa rolled her eyes and snapped, oh, please, Daniel. You've always been the soft one. No ambition, no fire. Dad knows I'm the only one capable of handling his empire. You'd probably give it all away to charity or some ridiculous cause. That's why it'll be mine, not yours. The jab hit Daniel hard. I saw his fists clench under the table, but he bit his tongue. He had always been quiet, always patient, always my moral compass. And yet, because of that, he had always been overlooked. I turned my gaze back to Vanessa. So that's it then? You stand in front of me, my daughter, and all you can see is my wealth? Not the man who carried you on his shoulders at the fair, not the father who stayed awake when you had fevers, not the one who worked 3 jobs so you could go to the best schools? Just the number in my bank account? For a split second, I thought I saw hesitation in her eyes. A flicker of the little girl she once was. But then her lips curled into a cold smile. You gave me the tools, Dad. Now don't be surprised that I plan to use them. It's survival of the fittest, and I plan to win. The room erupted then. My brother-in-law cleared his throat and said, maybe we should all calm down, but I cut him off. No, I thundered, slamming my hand on the table, louder than hers before. No more calm. No more pretending. If this is how my family views me, Then it's time the truth came out. They all froze. Even Vanessa's smirk faltered for a heartbeat. I stood tall, my chest heaving, and declared, "You think you know what's written in my will. You think you've already won. But let me tell you something, Vanessa, the first line of that will is going to crush every expectation you have. It's going to expose the truth about who deserves this fortune, and who doesn't." Her face tightened. She tried to hide it, but I saw the crack in her armor. "What do you mean by that?" she demanded. I gave a bitter smile. "You'll find out soon enough. When the lawyer reads it, the world will know exactly where my fortune is going, and why. And trust me, Vanessa, it won't be the way you think." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone's eyes were locked on me, some with fear, some with anticipation. And for the first time in years, I felt the power shift, not from my wealth, but from the truth I was finally ready to unleash. Backhand index pointing right, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. Greed met its match, betrayal faced justice, and the will I wrote became more than a document, it became my final message to the people who thought they owned me. The day of the will reading arrived like a storm I had been watching on the horizon for months. My daughter Vanessa walked into the lawyer's office as if she already owned the building. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, her designer handbag dangling from her arm like a trophy. My son Daniel followed quietly, his shoulders slightly hunched, hands stuffed into his pockets. My wife, Clara, floated in behind them, her expression unreadable, but her eyes darted nervously from side to side. I sat at the head of the polished oak conference table, my cane resting beside me. The room was grand but suffocating, lined with shelves of law books no one had read in years, the scent of leather and old paper heavy in the air. My attorney, Robert Gaines, adjusted his glasses and shuffled the stack of documents in front of him. He was a man who carried authority without raising his voice, and in that moment, he held more power than any of us. Because the truth sat in the papers he was about to read. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, her smug smile never leaving her face. "Let's get this over with," she said. "We all know what it says." Daniel shot her a look, but didn't speak. He had learned over the years that silence often said more than words. Robert cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I must remind everyone present that this document represents Mr. Hale's final wishes. It must be heard in full, without interruption, and respected as legally binding." Vanessa rolled her eyes. Yes, legally binding, final wishes. Can we just cut to the part where the estate is transferred to me?" I clenched my jaw, my fingers curling into a fist beneath the table. This was the very arrogance I had decided to confront when I put pen to paper months ago. Robert unfolded the will, his voice firm as he began. "This is the last will and testament of Jonathan Hale, dated and notarized 6 months prior. The first line reads as follows: Before any distribution of assets, let it be known that my estate shall not be inherited by entitlement, but by character." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Daniel blinked, his lips parting slightly. Clara furrowed her brow. Vanessa's smirk faltered for the first time. "What does that even mean?" she snapped, leaning forward. "That's just fancy wording. Everyone knows I'm the heir. That's how this works." Robert raised a hand calmly. "If you'll allow me to continue, Miss Hale, it will become clear." But I couldn't stay silent. I looked directly at my daughter, my voice cutting through the tension. "It means, Vanessa, that money alone doesn't decide who deserves what I built. It means you can't inherit $85 million just because you share my blood. You have to prove you're worthy of it." Her eyes narrowed. "Worthy? I'm your daughter. That's all the proof needed." "No," I said firmly. "That's not proof. That's privilege. And privilege without gratitude rots into greed." Robert cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I must remind everyone present that this document represents Mr. Hale's final wishes. It must be heard in full, without interruption, and respected as legally binding." Vanessa rolled her eyes. yes, yes, legally binding, final wishes. Can we just cut to the part where the estate is transferred to me? I clenched my jaw, my fingers curling into a fist beneath the table. This was the very arrogance I had decided to confront when I put pen to paper months ago. Robert unfolded the will, his voice firm as he began. This is the last will and testament of Jonathan Hale, dated and notarized 6 months prior. The first line reads as follows: before any distribution of assets, let it be known that my estate shall not be inherited by entitlement, but by character. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Daniel blinked, his lips parting slightly. Clara furrowed her brow. Vanessa's smirk faltered for the first time. What does that even mean? She snapped, leaning forward. That's just fancy wording. Everyone knows I'm the heir. That's how this works. Robert raised a hand calmly. If you'll allow me to continue, Miss Hale, it will become clear. But I couldn't stay silent. I looked directly at my daughter, my voice cutting through the tension. It means, Vanessa, that money alone doesn't decide who deserves what I built. It means you can't inherit $85 million just because you share my blood. You have to prove you're worthy of it. Her eyes narrowed. Worthy? I'm your daughter. That's all the proof needed. No, I said firmly. That's not proof, that's privilege. And privilege without gratitude rots into greed. Robert cleared his throat again, resuming. The document further states, those who stood by me, those who showed loyalty, humility, and respect, will be recognized. Those who betrayed these values will not receive what they believe is owed to them. The silence that followed was thick. Clara set her glass of water down, her hand trembling slightly. Daniel's eyes flickered toward me, filled with a quiet hope he tried to hide. Vanessa, however, slammed her hand on the table again. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You can't just rewrite the rules of inheritance because you want to play judge and jury. That money belongs to me. To the family. To the family? I repeated bitterly. Or to you, Vanessa? Because every word you've spoken makes it clear, you don't care about family. You only care about control. Her cheeks flushed red. You think you can manipulate us from the grave with riddles and a will? Fine. Read the rest. I'm not afraid. Robert adjusted his glasses again, reading on. Clause 1, Clara Hale, my wife, shall be entitled to her agreed prenuptial share, as signed upon marriage, amounting to $5 million. Clara's breath caught. She had expected more. I could see it in the way her lips pressed tightly together, the way her eyes darted briefly toward Vanessa as if seeking reassurance. Clause 2, Daniel Hale, my son, shall be entitled to the stewardship of the Jonathan Hale Foundation, with full access to its endowment of $10 million, to be used strictly for philanthropic purposes. Daniel's head jerked up. His eyes widened. Dad, you, his voice cracked, and he stopped, blinking hard against the weight of the moment. Vanessa scoffed, her laugh sharp and ugly. Oh, of course. Give Daniel the charity money. Perfect. He can go waste it on soup kitchens and animal shelters. Meanwhile, the real empire, she looked at Robert. Go on. Tell me what I get. Robert paused, his lips tightening as he read the next clause. Clause 3, Vanessa Hale, my daughter, he stopped, looked at me once, then continued. Shall receive nothing until she proves her ability to uphold the values of integrity, respect, and humility. Until such time, her share of the estate shall remain in trust, under the management of the executor. The room exploded. What? Vanessa's voice was shrill, her chair screeching back against the marble floor as she leapt to her feet. Nothing? Nothing? After everything I've done, after everything I've been promised, you're telling me I get nothing? Robert kept reading, his voice steady despite her outburst. The clause concludes, Vanessa Hale has confused inheritance with entitlement. Until she learns the difference, she will inherit no part of this estate. The words landed like a gavel striking. Final. Irrefutable. Vanessa's face went pale, then red, then pale again. She pointed at me with a shaking finger. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. You owe me. I rose slowly to my feet, leaning on my cane, my voice low but unshakable. No, Vanessa. I owe you nothing. I gave you life. I gave you every opportunity. What you did with it, that was your choice. And now you must live with the consequences of that choice. She turned to Clara, desperation creeping into her voice. Mom, say something. Tell him this isn't right. But Clara remained frozen, her lips pressed together, her eyes glassy. She had expected her share, and she had gotten it. Not as much as she wanted, perhaps, but enough. She wasn't going to fight for Vanessa. Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady now. Vanessa, maybe this is the lesson you needed. Dad's right. It's not about money. It's about what we do with it. And right now, all you've shown is greed. She glared at him, her voice dripping with venom. Shut up, Daniel. You've always been the weak one. Don't act like you've won anything here. But I could see the truth in her eyes. She wasn't angry because she had lost money. She was angry because she had lost control. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange peace wash over me. The storm had broken. The will had spoken. And the game had just begun. Backhand index pointing right, but little did Vanessa know, this was only the beginning. Because buried deeper in the will was a revelation so shocking, it wouldn't just crush her, it would change. The conference room had never felt smaller. Papers still lay scattered on the oak table, but the only sound was the uneven breathing of my daughter. Vanessa's knuckles were white as she gripped the back of her chair, her fury boiling over like a pot left unattended on the stove. This isn't over, she spat, her eyes darting between me and Robert. You think you can humiliate me like this? You think you can write me out of your life with a few lines in a will? I'll fight this in court. I'll drag this entire family through the mud if I have to. I remained standing, leaning lightly on my cane. My years had slowed me, but they hadn't softened me. My voice carried the weight of a father betrayed. You're not humiliated because I left you nothing. You're humiliated because, for once in your life, someone finally held you accountable. Her lips trembled with rage, and for the briefest moment I thought she might strike me. Instead, she stormed toward the door, her heels hammering the marble like a war drum. She paused at the threshold and turned, her face twisted. You'll regret this, Dad. All of you will. She left, the door slamming behind her, shaking the shelves of leather-bound books. The echo lingered long after her footsteps faded. Robert adjusted his tie, his usual calm returning. I anticipated resistance. She may indeed attempt to contest the will, though it was drawn airtight. Still, prepare yourselves for turbulence. Clara cleared her throat, her voice cool but strained. Turbulence? Robert, I don't think you realize what you've done. You've lit a fire under her. Vanessa will back down. She doesn't know how. Daniel, quiet as ever, finally spoke. Maybe she needs the fight. Maybe it's the only way she'll learn. I turned to him, pride swelling in my chest despite the storm raging around us. He wasn't perfect. He was quiet, reserved, sometimes too forgiving. But in that moment, I saw the man I had always hoped he'd become. Daniel, I said softly, the foundation is yours now. Don't let her poison your vision. Use it for good. That's what it was meant for. He nodded, his voice steady. I will, Dad. I promise. But Clara's eyes narrowed, her glassy stare cutting into me like a blade. And what about me, Jonathan? She asked, her tone deceptively calm. 5 million? That's what my years with you are worth? The bitterness in her voice caught me off guard. You knew the agreement we signed, I said firmly. You had security. You still do. 5 million ensures you'll never have to want for anything. Her lips curled into a thin smile, but her eyes betrayed her resentment. Security, she repeated, almost to herself. While Vanessa and Daniel inherit empires, I get security. She rose slowly, smoothed her dress, and walked out, her heels clicking with less fire than Vanessa's, but with something darker, calculation. The room was quieter now, but the silence was heavy with the cracks forming in my family. Robert closed the folder, his eyes meeting mine. Jonathan, you know what this means. Your daughter will come for the will. Your wife may not be far behind. But the truth is, your estate holds more than money. And once secrets start unraveling, he paused. There's no telling how deep the damage will go. I knew he was right. Because hidden in the sealed addendum of my will, something only Robert and I had discussed, was a truth that would shake Vanessa, Daniel, and Clara to their core. A truth I had kept buried for decades. And I knew Vanessa wouldn't rest until she unearthed it. Vanessa's fury didn't cool when she left the lawyer's office. If anything, it grew hotter, like a wildfire catching dry brush. She drove aimlessly through the city, her mind replaying every word, every line of that cursed will. Her father had humiliated her in front of everyone, had stripped her of what she believed was rightfully hers. How dare he, she muttered to herself, gripping the steering wheel tighter. How dare he treat me like some child who needs lessons? I built my life around this. That money was mine. Her phone buzzed. It was Clara. Sweetheart, her mother's voice purred through the line, smooth but laced with tension. We need to talk. Vanessa sighed. Don't tell me you're taking his side, too. Clara's laugh was short, humorless. His side? Hardly. But if we're going to get what we deserve, we need to be smart. Fighting him head-on won't work. He's prepared for that. But there are other ways. I know things Daniel doesn't. Things Robert doesn't. Secrets. Vanessa's grip on the wheel loosened, curiosity piercing through her anger. Secrets? Clara lowered her voice, almost to a whisper. Meet me tonight. We'll discuss it then. Just remember, Jonathan Hale isn't the saint he pretends to be. And if those secrets come out, his precious will won't matter. The line went dead. Vanessa leaned back in her seat, a slow smile spreading across her face. She had walked into that office ready to inherit millions. She had walked out with nothing. But now her mother was offering her something else. A weapon. And Vanessa had never been one to fight fair. Back in my study that evening, I stared at the framed photos on the wall. One showed Vanessa at 10 years old, holding a science fair ribbon. Another showed Daniel as a boy, clutching a baseball glove too big for his hand. Clara stood beside me in a portrait from our wedding day, her smile radiant, her eyes unreadable. I wondered when it had all started to unravel. Was it my relentless drive for success? My long nights away from home? Or had the seeds of greed and resentment always been there, just waiting for the right moment to bloom? I tapped my cane against the floor, the sound echoing in the emptiness of the room. I thought of Robert's warning, of the sealed addendum he guarded in his office. The secret I had hidden for so long. Because the truth was this. My estate wasn't just $85 million. It carried with it a past. I had buried a past that could destroy the very family fighting over my fortune. And I knew, sooner or later, that past would surface. Meanwhile, Daniel sat alone in his small apartment, the folder Robert had given him resting on the table. Inside were the documents transferring control of the foundation into his name. $10 million, earmarked for causes he believed in. But as he flipped through the papers, he couldn't shake the sound of Vanessa's voice from his head. Her cruelty, her entitlement, her venom. And beneath it all, he felt a pang of guilt. Why had their father trusted him and not her? Why had he been chosen as the steward of something so important? He didn't realize it then, but that guilt would soon drive him into decisions that would test not just his loyalty, but his very identity. Because Daniel, too, was about to discover the secret buried in our family's past. And as night fell over the Hale estate, 3 separate hearts burned with different fires. Mine. With the burden of truth I had hidden too long. Daniel's, with the weight of a responsibility he wasn't sure he deserved. And Vanessa's, with the hunger for revenge, stoked now by whispers from her mother. The storm was no longer on the horizon. It was here. And the first cracks of thunder had already shaken the ground beneath us. Backhand index pointing right, but what none of them knew was that the darkest storm hadn't even begun. Because the secret locked in Robert's office, sealed inside my will, would not just divide us. It would tear open a truth that none of them were ready to face. The night was thick with tension when Vanessa pulled up outside her mother's townhouse. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every car door slam echo louder than it should. She walked briskly up the steps, heels clicking, her anger still simmering from the day's humiliation. Clara was waiting inside, a glass of red wine in her hand, her expression cool, unreadable. Vanessa dropped her purse on the couch. "All right, Mom. I'm here. You said you had something. Start talking." Clara took a slow sip, set the glass down, and leaned back in her chair. "Jonathan thinks he's clever. He thinks his little speech about character makes him noble. But what he doesn't realize is that his empire wasn't built on just hard work. It was built on secrets. And secrets, sweetheart, are leverage." Vanessa frowned. "What secrets?" "Dad's as straight-laced as they come. He barely even drinks." A thin smile crossed Clara's lips. "Not all sins are visible in a glass, Vanessa. Some are buried in contracts, handshakes, and broken promises. Your father didn't start with nothing, no matter what he claims. There was someone else involved in those early years. Someone who helped him. Someone he never acknowledged." Vanessa leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Who?" Clara's smile widened. "Your uncle. My brother, Charles. He and Jonathan started out together. But when money started coming in, Jonathan pushed him out. Cut him off. Built his empire on Charles's ideas. And your father never spoke of it again. He buried the truth." Vanessa blinked, stunned. "You're telling me Dad stole from Uncle Charles?" "I'm telling you," Clara said slowly, "that without Charles, your father wouldn't have had the foundation for the company he now calls his own. And the guilt of that has haunted him for years. Why do you think Charles left the country? Why do you think Jonathan never allowed his name to be mentioned in this house?" Vanessa's pulse quickened. She had walked in that night furious, desperate. But now? Now she felt the ground shift beneath her. If this is true, then why haven't you ever said anything? Clara picked up her wine again, swirling it lazily. "Because, darling, timing is everything. And until now, there was nothing to gain from airing it. But with this will, with him humiliating you, humiliating us? Timing has finally come." Vanessa's mind raced. Her father had always presented himself as the self-made man, the hard worker who clawed his way out of poverty. If this story came out, it would shatter his reputation. And more importantly, it could challenge the legitimacy of his empire, and his will. She stood slowly, her jaw tightening. "Then we use it. We expose him. We show everyone the truth. And when we do, no one will take his will seriously." Clara's eyes glistened. "Now you're thinking like me." Across town, Daniel sat in his apartment, staring at the foundation documents again. $10 million for charity. His father's trust. His sister's rage. His mother's cold detachment. It all swirled in his mind like a storm he couldn't escape. He picked up the phone and dialed Robert. "Daniel," Robert's voice came steady on the other end. "I expected your call." Daniel sighed. "I don't know if I can do this. Dad's faith in me, it's overwhelming. And Vanessa, she won't stop. I can feel it. She's not going to let this go." Robert paused. "You're right. She won't. And there's something you need to know, Daniel. Something your father asked me to keep sealed until the right time. But given the way things are unraveling, it may come sooner than expected. Daniel's heart skipped. What is it? Robert lowered his voice. Your father left an addendum. A sealed section of the will. It contains information not about the estate, but about the family. Information that will change everything. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. What kind of information? I can't tell you yet, Robert replied firmly. Not until your father authorizes it. But I will say this. Your father's legacy isn't what it appears. And when the truth comes out, you'll need to be strong enough to stand in it. The line went quiet. Daniel sat in the silence, his heart pounding. For the first time, he wondered if his father's fortune wasn't just a blessing, but a curse. Meanwhile, I sat in my study, staring at the flames flickering in the fireplace. My cane rested beside me, the weight of years pressing heavy on my shoulders. I thought of Vanessa's fury, of Clara's cold smile, of Daniel's quiet doubt. They were all playing their parts in a story I had tried to control, but control is a fragile thing. I whispered to the empty room, as if speaking to my younger self. Secrets don't stay buried forever. They wait. They wait for the moment you least expect, and then they burn everything you've built. I knew what Clara was capable of. I had seen her ambition, her hunger, long before I married her. I knew she would use anything, anyone, to get what she wanted. And now she had Vanessa in her grasp. But what she didn't know was that the secret she thought she held wasn't the only one. There was something deeper, something darker, locked in that sealed addendum. Something that, once revealed, would not just tarnish my empire, it would split my family to the core. And I wasn't sure any of us would survive it. Later that week, Vanessa showed up unannounced at Daniel's apartment. She didn't knock gently. She pounded on the door until he opened it, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep. What do you want, Vanessa? He asked wearily. She pushed past him into the living room, tossing her purse on the couch. I want to talk. About Dad. About the will. Daniel closed the door slowly. There's nothing to talk about. The will is final. You heard Robert. Vanessa spun on him, her eyes blazing. You really think it's that simple? You think Dad's little morality play about character is going to stand unchallenged? No. He's hiding something, Daniel. And when I find out what it is, that won't mean a thing. Daniel crossed his arms. You're letting your greed blind you. This isn't about money anymore, it's about revenge. Maybe it is, she snapped. But revenge is still a kind of justice. Daniel shook his head. Not when it destroys everything in its path. Vanessa's voice softened suddenly, a dangerous shift. Don't you want to know, Daniel? Don't you want to know the truth about Dad? About how he really built his empire? About what he's kept from us all these years? Daniel hesitated. Her words cut into him, stirring the unease Robert had already planted. What do you mean? Vanessa's smile was sharp, almost triumphant. I mean, Dad isn't the saint you think he is. He built his fortune on betrayal. And Mom and I can prove it. Daniel stared at her, the ground shifting under his feet. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. And Vanessa knew she had found her opening. That night, as I lay awake in my bed, I could almost hear the gears turning in their minds. Clara, whispering poison. Vanessa, sharpening it into a blade. Daniel, caught in the middle, torn between loyalty and doubt. The cracks in my family were widening. And soon, the flood would come. Backhand index pointing right, but none of them understood yet that the truth hidden in my will wasn't about stolen business or betrayed partners. It was about blood. About identity. And when it came out, it wouldn't just crush Vanessa's arrogance, it would destroy everything she thought she knew about who she was. The knock on Robert Gaines's office door was sharp and insistent. He adjusted his glasses, already knowing who it was before the secretary let her in. Vanessa stormed inside, Clara gliding behind her with calculated poise. I want answers, Vanessa barked, slamming her hand on the polished desk. You're hiding something. My father is hiding something. And I'm not leaving until you tell me. Robert didn't flinch. He folded his hands neatly in front of him, his expression calm. Ms. Hale, everything you need to know is in your father's will. Nothing more, nothing less. Clara leaned forward, her voice low and persuasive. Come now, Robert. We both know Jonathan Hale doesn't play fair. That will of his, it isn't the whole story. There's something sealed. An addendum. Robert's eyes flickered for just a moment. Vanessa caught it instantly. There, she said, her voice sharp. I saw that. You know something. What is it? Robert cleared his throat, choosing his words carefully. The addendum you speak of is confidential. It is to be revealed only under Jonathan's explicit instruction. Until then, I cannot. Vanessa cut him off, her voice rising. You can't? Or you won't? Because if you think I'm just going to sit around while my own inheritance is stolen, you're mistaken. I'll drag this through every court in the country if I have to. Clara placed a hand on her daughter's arm, gently restraining her, but her own eyes were locked on Robert like a hawk. Jonathan may have given you instructions, Robert. But ask yourself, are you protecting him or are you protecting the truth? Robert's jaw tightened. He had spent years protecting me, carrying secrets I wasn't ready to face. But even the most loyal man has his limits. He rose, walked to the locked cabinet in the corner, and withdrew a thick sealed envelope. He set it on the desk with deliberate care. This, he said softly, is the addendum. But I warn you, what's inside will not give you what you want. It will not restore your inheritance. It will only bring pain. Vanessa snatched it up without hesitation, tearing it open like a starving animal. Pages spilled across the desk. Her eyes scanned the words, her lips moving silently as she read. Then, suddenly, she froze. Her face went pale. What is this? She whispered. Clara leaned over her shoulder, reading quickly. Her glass of composure cracked for the first time. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Vanessa staggered back from the desk, the papers trembling in her hands. This isn't possible. This can't be true. Robert's voice was heavy with gravity. It's true. Your father insisted it be documented legally. And now you know. Vanessa's voice cracked as she shouted, I'm not his daughter? You're telling me my whole life has been a lie? The words ripped through the room like lightning. Clara closed her eyes, her body shaking, but whether from guilt or fear, even I couldn't tell. Robert spoke quietly. Jonathan requested that, upon his death, it be revealed, Vanessa is not his biological child. Her real father is Charles Whitman, Clara's brother. The silence that followed was suffocating. Vanessa stared at her mother, her eyes wide, wild. Uncle Charles? Uncle Charles is my father? You've been lying to me my whole life? Clara reached for her daughter, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Vanessa, please. But Vanessa shoved her away, the betrayal boiling over in her veins. Don't touch me. You let me believe I was his blood, his heir. You let me fight him, humiliate myself, all while knowing I had no claim to his fortune at all. Her voice broke, the weight of the truth crushing her arrogance into something raw, almost childlike. Who am I, then? What am I? Robert's eyes softened. You're still you, Vanessa. But the estate, Jonathan made it clear. By law, you were never entitled to it. That's why the trust was written as it was. Vanessa's hand shook violently, the papers slipping from her grip and scattering across the floor. Her whole body seemed to collapse in on itself. Clara knelt down, her voice desperate. I did it to protect you. Jonathan knew the truth all along, but he raised you as his own. Doesn't that mean anything? Doesn't it show how much he loved you? But Vanessa's eyes burned with something darker than grief. Hatred. Love? Don't talk to me about love. You and Jonathan both lied to me. You built my whole life on lies. And now I'm left with nothing. She turned and fled the office, the door slamming behind her. Clara remained kneeling on the floor, her tears dripping onto the scattered pages. Robert sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. The storm has broken, he murmured. That night, I sat in my study, the weight of years pressing down harder than ever. I knew the moment had come. The secret I had buried for decades was no longer hidden. I remembered the day Clara had confessed her betrayal, years after our marriage, after Vanessa had already called me daddy. I remembered the rage, the humiliation, the heartbreak. But when I looked into Vanessa's eyes, when I saw the child who believed in me, I made a choice. I chose to raise her as my own. I chose to give her a name, a home, a future. But I also chose to protect her from the truth. And now that truth had torn her apart. Blood doesn't make family, I whispered into the empty room. But betrayal can unmake it. Vanessa drove through the night, her vision blurred by tears, her hands gripping the wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Every memory of childhood flashed through her mind. Her father teaching her to ride a bike, cheering at her school plays, walking her down the aisle of her first heartbreak. All of it, she thought, a lie. She pulled over on the side of the road, sobbing into her hands. For the first time, she wasn't the entitled heiress. She wasn't the girl who thought she owned the world. She was a child lost, abandoned by truth, betrayed by the very people who were supposed to love her most. And as her sobs turned into heaving breaths, anger returned. If she had nothing left, then she would burn everything around her until they all had nothing too. Daniel, meanwhile, received a call from Robert later that evening. Daniel, Robert said, his voice low, your sister knows the truth now. And I fear what she might do. Daniel's chest tightened. The truth? Robert hesitated, then sighed. I can't say more yet. That must come from your father. But prepare yourself. When Vanessa comes to you, and she will, you'll need to choose which side you stand on. Daniel hung up, his heart pounding. He thought of his sister, her rage, her pride. He thought of his father, his quiet strength. And he knew the storm was about to pull him into its center. Backhand index pointing right, the truth was out. But the fallout had only begun. Because once blood is questioned, loyalty is tested, and the final choice would determine not just who inherited the fortune, but whether this family survived at all. The morning of the will's public reading arrived like the calm before a storm. The Hale family estate had never felt so cold. Every painting on the walls, every polished piece of furniture seemed to stare down with judgment. I sat at the head of the long oak table, my breath shallow but steady. Robert stood beside me with the sealed leather folder. On the other side of the table, Vanessa stormed in first, her eyes red-rimmed but burning with defiance. Behind her came Clara, wearing a mask of brittle elegance that could shatter at any word. Daniel entered last, his expression torn between loyalty and fear. Let's get this over with, Vanessa snapped. We already know I've been cut out. Let's hear how much Daniel gets while I get thrown into the dirt. Her voice dripped venom, but beneath it trembled a wound no arrogance could mask. Robert opened the folder. He cleared his throat, and the silence tightened around us like a rope. This is the last will and testament of Jonathan Hale. By his command, the first line is to be read aloud before anything else. Vanessa crossed her arms. Go on, then. Let's hear my humiliation written on paper. Robert unfolded the page, adjusted his glasses, and began. His voice rang through the hall, deliberate and steady. To my children, if you came here expecting a dime from my estate, you are already poor. The words struck like a thunderclap. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Daniel flinched. Even Clara's composure cracked, her hand tightening on the table's edge. Robert continued. Wealth is not counted in dollars, but in honor, in truth, in the love you give and the legacy you protect. Those who betrayed these values will inherit nothing but regret. Vanessa shot to her feet, her chair scraping across the floor. You can't be serious. He can't mean this. She whirled on me, her voice raw. Father, say something. You can't leave me with nothing. My voice came out steady, though my chest ached. Vanessa, I gave you everything that mattered long before money ever entered the picture. I gave you my name, my home, my love. But you traded it all for greed. And now the paper reflects the truth you wrote with your own actions. Her hands trembled as she pointed at me, her voice breaking. No, you lied to me. You let me live a lie my whole life, knowing I wasn't your daughter. And now you punish me for being angry? Clara's voice cut in, sharp and trembling. Vanessa, stop. No, Mother. Vanessa turned on her like a wild flame. You're the reason for this. You and your filthy secret. You ruined everything. If anyone deserves nothing, it's you. Clara gasped, her face pale, but she held her ground. I did what I thought would protect you. Protect me? Vanessa laughed bitterly. You destroyed me. Her eyes shifted to Daniel, desperate and furious. And you, what about you? You've always been his little soldier, the good son. But you knew, didn't you? You knew I was different. Daniel shook his head, his voice firm but sorrowful. I didn't know, Vanessa. But I know this, being his child was never about blood. It was about respect. And you never gave him any. Vanessa's lip trembled, her pride shattering into pieces. She turned back to me, her voice a whisper now. So, that's it? After everything? After raising me, calling me your daughter, you'll just throw me away? I leaned forward, the weight of a father's love and a man's truth pressing against every word. I never threw you away, Vanessa. But love without honor is wasted. I can forgive your anger, your pride, even your hatred. But I cannot reward it. The will is final. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed back into her chair, silent tears rolling down her face. Robert resumed reading. To my son, Daniel Hale, you inherit not only the majority of the estate, but also the responsibility of carrying forward the legacy of integrity upon which it was built. Daniel's eyes widened. Father. I raised a hand. Daniel, listen. This isn't a reward. It's a burden. And only if you carry it with honor will it mean anything. Robert closed the folder, his voice soft. The rest contains legal details, but the essence is spoken. The estate is divided, the truth is revealed, and the choice remains. Silence filled the room. Clara sat trembling, her lies exposed. Vanessa sat broken, her arrogance reduced to ash. Daniel sat stunned, the weight of inheritance heavy on his shoulders. Finally, Vanessa whispered, her voice fragile. So what do I do now? If I have nothing, what am I supposed to be? I met her eyes, my voice gentle now. Be something money can't buy. Be someone who doesn't measure life in dollars, but in love. That is the only inheritance that lasts. For the first time, her anger faltered. Her tears came freely, and though she said nothing more, I saw the spark of realization flicker behind her eyes. Whether it grew or died would be her choice alone. I leaned back, my chest heavy, my strength fading. But my heart was clear. The first line of my will had done its work, it had crushed their greed, shattered their lies, and revealed the only truth that mattered. Money can be stolen. Blood can be betrayed. But honor is eternal. Greed blinds us, lies destroy us, but truth frees us. In the end, it's not the fortune we leave behind that defines us, it's the love and honor we pass on.